My parents skipped my graduation to fix my sister's tantrum, so I quietly moved out. Then days later, their perfect life collapsed. It started with a single vibration in my pocket. I stood on the stage, the bright stadium lights burning into my eyes, while the roar of applause washed over the crowd. I was 22 years old, wearing a gown that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, waiting for the one moment that was supposed to be mine. Around me, other graduates were leaning over railings, waving to their families in the stands. I scanned the third row, looking for the specific block of tickets I had reserved months ago. Seats 14, 15, and 16 were empty. They were three black voids in a sea of color. My phone buzzed against my leg again. I knew I should not look. The dean was still reading names starting with J, and my last name was Carter. But the emptiness in those seats made my stomach twist. I slipped the phone out of my pocket, shielding the screen with my sleeve, so the marshals would not see. It was a message from Mom. "Honey, your sister is not doing well. She is overwhelmed. We have to stay back tonight. You are strong. You will understand." I stared at the words until they blurred. Not doing well. That was the code. It meant Chloe was crying, or Chloe was anxious, or Chloe simply decided she needed the air in the room to herself. It did not matter what the specific crisis was. It only mattered that it was happening to her, which meant nothing else could happen for me. Ralph Carter. The voice over the loudspeaker was booming. I shoved the phone deep into my pocket. I walked toward the dean. I did not look at the empty seats again. I shook the hand offered to me. I took the diploma case. I smiled for the camera, a practiced, tight expression I had perfected over 2 decades of being the easy child. The applause for me was polite. There were no whistles. No one shouted my name. My dad was not there to clap too loudly. My mom was not there to cry. As I walked down the steps, the heat of the stage lights faded, replaced by a cold clarity settling deep in my bones. This was not an emergency. This was a hierarchy. For 4 years, I had worked late shifts and studied until my eyes burned, telling myself that if I just achieved enough, I would earn a spot on their priority list. I thought this ceremony would be the finish line. I thought they would be there, finally seeing me. But looking at that text message in my mind, I realized the truth. They did not skip this because they could not come. They skipped it because they knew I would forgive them. "You are strong. You will understand." It was not a compliment. It was a verdict. It was a life sentence of being the emotional designated driver for a family drunk on drama. I sat back down in my folding chair. I did not text back. I did not ask for details. I did not argue that this was the one day I had asked for in 6 months. Around me, classmates were hugging, laughing, throwing caps in the air. I folded my hands in my lap. I felt small, almost invisible, but beneath the hurt, something else was waking up. A quiet, terrifying resolve. I was done understanding. I watched the rest of the ceremony in silence. When it ended, I did not go to the designated meeting point. I walked straight to the parking lot. I had spent my whole life waiting for them to choose me. Today, standing alone on the asphalt, I decided to finally choose myself. The drive from the stadium to my apartment was a blur of red taillights and gray concrete. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet hallway. The air inside was stale, holding the heat of the day. I closed the door behind me and locked the deadbolt. The click of the metal latch sounded final, like a period at the end of a long, run-on sentence. I dropped my keys on the counter. Beside them sat a stack of paper plates and a package of plastic forks I had bought 2 days ago. I had thought, Foolishly, that my parents might come back here after the ceremony. I had imagined ordering pizza, maybe opening a bottle of cheap wine, and sitting around the small living room while they told me they were proud. Now, the unopened plastic packaging just looked pathetic. It was evidence of a delusion I had nursed for far too long. I walked into my bedroom and pulled my large suitcase from the back of the closet. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light as I unzipped the main compartment. I did not pack with anger. Anger would have been loud. I would have thrown clothes, slammed drawers, and broken things. This was not a tantrum. This was a surgical removal. I moved methodically. I folded my t-shirts. I packed my jeans. I gathered my socks and underwear. I emptied the bathroom cabinet, sweeping my toothbrush, razor, and deodorant into a travel bag. Every item I placed in the suitcase felt like a weight being lifted. I was not just packing clothes. I was packing up the version of myself that lived in this city. The Ralph who answered every call on the first ring. The Ralph who spent his weekends fixing his dad's computer or listening to his mom vent about Chloe's latest drama. That Ralph was staying here, in this empty apartment, along with the plastic forks and the unfulfilled expectations. I cleared off my desk next. My laptop went into its case. I stacked my notebooks. Then I paused. My eyes landed on a framed photograph on the bookshelf. It was taken 3 years ago at Thanksgiving. Mom and Dad were laughing at something Chloe was saying. Chloe was in the center, animated and bright. I was off to the side, half cut out of the frame, holding a platter of turkey. It was a perfect summary of our family dynamic. The performers and the stagehand. I picked up the photo. For a second, I considered smashing it. It would have felt good to hear the glass shatter. But that would be something Chloe would do. She dealt in destruction. I dealt in disappearance. I placed the photo face down on the empty shelf and walked away. When the suitcase was full, I zipped it shut. It was heavy, but I lifted it with a strange surge of energy. I took one last look around the apartment. My lease was up at the end of the month, and I had already paid the final rent. I did not need to clean. I did not need to explain. I was simply done. I stopped at the kitchen island on my way out. There was a notepad by the fridge where I usually wrote grocery lists. I picked up a pen. My hand hovered over the paper. I should write something. I should tell them I was hurt. I should demand an apology. I should explain that skipping my graduation was the final straw in a haystack of neglect. But then I thought about what would happen if I did. Mom would call crying. Dad would tell me I was being dramatic. Chloe would somehow make it about herself, claiming my departure was stressing her out. If I wrote a note, I was inviting a response. I was opening a negotiation. I put the pen down. I left the paper blank. The most powerful thing I could say to them was nothing at all. I hauled my suitcase down the 2 flights of stairs to the parking lot. My car, a beat-up sedan I had bought with my own money from waiting tables, was waiting in the corner spot. I threw the suitcase into the trunk and slammed the lid. As I climbed into the driver's seat, my phone buzzed against the center console. The screen lit up. Mom. I stared at the preview of the message. "We are so sorry, Ralph. Chloe had a panic attack about her job interview tomorrow, and we just could not leave her alone. We will make it up to you next weekend. Dinner on us. Promise." I let out a short, dry laugh. Next weekend. Just like the birthday dinner that got pushed a month. Just like the soccer game they missed, because Chloe had a migraine. Just like the tuition help they promised, but never delivered because Chloe needed a new car. Dinner on us. The currency of their guilt was worthless. I did not type a reply. I did not delete the message. I simply pressed the side button to silence the phone and tossed it onto the passenger seat. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered to life. I reversed out of the spot and drove toward the exit of the complex. I did not look in the rearview mirror. 10 minutes later, I was merging onto the highway, heading west. The skyline of Detroit began to shrink behind me. The further I drove, the tighter my chest felt. This was it. I was really doing it. I was cutting the cord. A wave of anxiety washed over me. What if something actually happened? What if they needed me? What if I was making a mistake that I could not undo? The instinct to turn around, to go back and be the good son, was a physical ache in my gut. It was a habit etched into my DNA. But then I looked at the empty road ahead. For the first time in my life, I did not know what was going to happen next. There was no schedule. There was no crisis to manage. There was just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the sun dipping lower in the sky. I was terrifyingly, wonderfully alone. I rolled down the window and let the wind rush in, drowning out the quiet panic in my head. I pressed my foot down harder on the gas pedal. The car surged forward, carrying me away from the only life I had ever known, toward a house in Grand Rapids where I hoped, for the first time, I might find room to breathe. My phone lit up again on the seat beside me. Another buzz. Another demand for attention. I kept my eyes on the road and let it ring. The hum of the highway tires eventually gave way to the crunch of gravel. As I turned into the long, shaded driveway, the sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn of my grandfather's house in Grand Rapids. Silas Cotter was sitting on his front porch in a rocking chair that looked as weathered as he did. He did not stand up when I pulled the car to a stop near the barn. He did not wave. He simply lowered the newspaper. He was reading, and watched over the top of his glasses as I climbed out of the driver's seat. I stood by the trunk of my car, the engine ticking as it cooled in the evening air. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I had driven 3 hours on impulse, fueled by adrenaline and hurt, but now the reality was setting in. I had nowhere else to go. If he turned me away, I would be sleeping in a parking lot. I dragged my suitcase out of the trunk and walked up the wooden steps. I waited for the questions. I braced myself for the interrogation my parents would have launched. Why are you here? Why did you leave? What did you do to upset your sister? Silas folded his newspaper calmly. He looked at the suitcase, then up at my face. He took in the redness of my eyes and the tension in my shoulders. Coffee is fresh, he said. Door is unlocked. That was it. No judgment. No demand for an explanation. He went back to reading his paper. I walked inside, feeling a strange tightness in my throat. The house smelled the way it always did, like old wood, strong coffee, and lemon oil. It was a scent that belonged to a different era, a time before panic attacks and family group chats. I left my suitcase in the hallway and went into the kitchen. For the next 2 days, the silence in the house was absolute. At first, it terrified me. In my parents' house, silence was a weapon. It meant Mom was giving someone the cold shoulder, or Dad was stewing over a bill, or Chloe was preparing to launch a new crisis. Silence was the deep breath before the scream. I spent the first 24 hours walking on eggshells. I closed doors softly. I washed my coffee mug the second I finished using it. I waited for Silas to sit me down and tell me to go back. To tell me that family is family and I was being selfish. But the lecture never came. Silas moved through his day with a rhythmic, predictable stability. He woke up at 6. He drank his coffee black. He worked in his woodshop until noon. He ate a sandwich. He read in the afternoons. He demanded nothing from me. He did not ask me to perform. He did not ask me to fix anything. On the second afternoon, I sat across from him at the kitchen table. He was peeling an apple with a small pocket knife, the skin coming off in one long, unbroken red ribbon. "I graduated," I said. The words felt heavy in the quiet room. Silas stopped peeling. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. "I know," he said. "I marked it on the calendar." He pointed to the wall where a paper calendar hung. I looked at the date. There was a small circle around it. My name was written inside. "They didn't come," I said. My voice cracked, just a fraction. Silas sliced a piece of apple and set it down on a napkin. "I figured as much when I saw your car." He pushed the apple slice toward me. It was a simple gesture, stripped of all the theatrical pity my mother would have layered onto it. He was not trying to fix my feelings. He was just feeding me. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. "The bed in the guest room is made." That night, I slept for 12 hours straight. I woke up in the guest room, with sunlight streaming across the quilt. Disoriented. For a split second, panic seized me. I thought I was back in Detroit. I thought I had overslept and missed an errand for Chloe. My hand shot out to the nightstand, searching for my phone, ready to apologize for existing. Then I saw the dust motes dancing in the calm air. I heard the distant buzz of a table saw from the shed. I was safe. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling. The knot that had been in my chest for years, the one I had learned to breathe around, was beginning to loosen. It felt physical, like a muscle unclenching. I realized then how much energy I spent just bracing for impact. Living with my parents and Chloe was like living in a house built on a fault line. You never knew when the floor would drop out, so you never stood completely still. You never fully rested. You kept your knees bent, ready to jump or run or catch whatever was falling. Here, the floor was solid. The foundation held. I got up and walked out to the porch. Silas was there, staring out at the tree line. I sat in the other rocking chair. We did not speak. We watched a hawk circle a field in the distance. In this silence, I began to see my parents' lives clearly for the first time. I saw the frantic energy they mistook for love. They thought love was worrying. They thought love was rushing to fix things. They thought love was noise. Silas offered a different kind of care. He offered space. He offered the dignity of letting me be an adult who made a choice. He treated me like a man, not a utility. For the first time in my life, I did not feel invisible. I felt seen, simply because no one was looking through me to get to someone else. I closed my eyes and let the rhythm of the rocking chair soothe the lingering ache in my bones. I could get used to this. I could build a life like this. A life where no was a complete sentence and silence was just peace. But the world I left behind was not ready to let me go so easily. Inside the house, on the kitchen table, where I had left it, my phone began to vibrate against the hard wood. It was a long, angry buzz that shattered the morning quiet. Then it stopped. Then it started again. Silas stopped rocking. He turned his head toward the screen door. The sound was persistent, demanding, and sharp. It was the sound of the other shoe finally dropping. The vibration rattled the quiet kitchen table. A persistent, mechanical intrusion that refused to be ignored. I walked over and flipped the phone screen up. It was not an apology. It was not even a greeting. "Did you pay the electric bill last month?" The auto draft failed. A second text followed before I could even process the first. Your father tried to transfer money to Chloe and it was declined. Do you have access to the main account? Call us. I stared at the screen, my brow furrowing. My parents lived in a pristine suburban bubble. They drove luxury SUVs. They went on vacations. The idea of an electric bill bouncing was absurd. It had to be a system error. Silas walked in through the back door, wiping sawdust from his hands with a shop rag. He paused when he saw me standing over the phone. He did not need to see the screen to know what was happening. They are asking for money, aren't they? He asked. They are saying the bills are bouncing, I said, looking up at him. And a transfer to Chloe failed. Silas walked to the sink. He pumped the handle and began to wash his hands, scrubbing the grease and dust from his knuckles with slow, deliberate movements. He did not look surprised. He looked resigned. That sounds right, he said. What do you mean? I asked. Dad makes good money. Mom works full-time. How can the electric bill bounce? Silas dried his hands on a towel and turned to face me. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked older in that light, the weight of a long, kept secret settling in the lines of his face. I stopped the deposits on Tuesday, he said. The same day you pulled into my driveway. The room seemed to tilt. What deposits? Your father has not paid his own mortgage in 10 years. Ralph, Silas said. His voice was steady, factual. He has not covered a full month of bills since Chloe started high school. I laughed. A short, confused sound. That is impossible. We lived in the big house on Elm Street. We had the boat. We had the country club membership. You had those things because I paid for them, Silas said. He walked over to the table and pulled out a chair, gesturing for me to sit. I sank into the seat, my mind racing to catch up. Silas laid it out for me, peeling back the layers of my childhood to reveal the rot underneath. My parents were not successful. They were drowning. They spent money, they did not have to curate an image of perfection. But the real drain, the black hole that swallowed every paycheck, was Chloe. The private tutors when she failed classes. The lawyers when she got into trouble. The therapy that was out of network. The apartments she leased and abandoned. They spent everything on her, Silas said. And when they ran short, they came to me. 1,000 here. 5,000 there. Just to keep the lights on. Just to keep the facade from cracking. I felt a cold numbness spreading through my limbs. I thought about all the times I was told to be prudent. All the times I was praised for being low maintenance. You are so easy, Ralph. You do not need much. I had worn that label like a badge of honor. I thought I was being virtuous. I thought I was helping the family save for the future. But there was no future. There was no savings account. There was only Chloe, and the endless pit of her needs. I was low maintenance because they could not afford two of us. I whispered. Silas nodded. I thought I was helping. I thought if I kept the family stable, they would eventually sort themselves out. I thought I was taking care of my granddaughters and my grandson equally by keeping the roof over your heads. He looked at me, and his expression hardened. There was a flash of anger there, not at me but at himself. But I was not buying stability, he said. I was buying favoritism. I was subsidizing their neglect of you, so they could afford their obsession with her. The truth hit me harder than the silence had. My parents were not just bad at loving me. They were frauds. Their entire authority, their lectures on responsibility and success, it was all a lie funded by the man sitting across from me. You cut them off? I asked. Completely, Silas said. If you are not welcome in that house, then my money is not welcome in their accounts. My phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. Ralph. Answer. It is urgent. The card was declined at the pharmacy. We need to know if you changed the passwords. A dark, cold satisfaction bloomed in my chest. It was not a nice feeling. It was jagged and heavy, but it felt like power. They do not know yet, I said. They think it is a glitch. They think I messed something up with the online banking. They will figure it out. Silas said. When the credit line freezes. When the next check bounces. I looked at the phone. For years, I had been the fixer. I was the one who set up the Wi-Fi. I was the one who explained the data plan. I was the tech support they used to keep their comfortable life running smoothly. Now, the system was crashing, and they were panic texting the IT department. But I had quit. They are going to panic, I said. Yes, Silas said. They are. I imagined the scene in Detroit. My mom at the pharmacy counter, flushing red as the card was declined. My dad shouting at his laptop screen. Chloe crying because her prescription, or her smoothie, or her gas money was suddenly unavailable. The chaos they had sheltered her from was finally breaching the walls. I am not going to answer, I said. Silas nodded. Good. I watched the phone vibrate again. The messages were coming faster now. The tone was shifting from annoyance to fear. They were realizing that the safety net was gone, and they were free, falling. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was not the son who needed to save them. I was the spectator. I was watching a building collapse from a safe distance, knowing I was the one who had walked out the exit just before the supports gave way. It is over, I said softly. No, Silas said, looking at the screen door. It is just beginning. He was right. My parents were not the type to suffer in silence. They were not the type to accept consequences. When the money ran out and the panic set in, they would look for someone to blame. And they knew exactly where I was. My phone rang. This time, it was not a text. It was a call from my father. I watched the name flash on the screen, bright and demanding. I let it ring, until it went to voicemail, leaving a heavy, loaded silence in the kitchen. That felt like the calm before a storm. The silence of the kitchen did not last long. The voicemail notification on my screen was quickly buried under a landslide of new messages. They arrived in a frantic staccato rhythm, buzzing against the wood of the table, like an angry hornet trapped under a glass. We do not understand. Pick up the phone. Your grandfather is not answering the landline. Is he sick? Did you tell him something? We need to pay the mortgage, Ralph. This is not a game. I watched the notifications stack up, a digital monument to their panic. For 20 years, my parents had operated with the smooth, unquestioned authority of monarchs. They issued decrees, and the world adjusted. Now, for the first time, they were pulling levers, and nothing was happening. The drawbridge was up. The treasury was closed. Silas walked over to the wall where the landline phone hung. He reached out and unplugged the cord from the jack. He coiled the wire neatly and set the phone on the counter. I am going to the shop, he said. If anyone comes up the driveway, you decide if you want to open the door. He left me alone with the buzzing phone. I did not turn it off. I let it vibrate. I wanted to feel the distance between their panic and my peace. I wanted to sit in the eye of the storm and realize that the wind could not touch me anymore. The digital assault lasted for 24 hours. Then, the physical one arrived. It was late afternoon, when I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel. It was not the slow, respectful approach of a delivery truck. It was fast and aggressive. Dust billowed into the air as a silver luxury SUV skidded to a halt next to my battered seat-in. I recognized the car immediately. My father loved that car. He washed it every Sunday, polishing the rims until they gleamed, treating the leather seats with expensive oils. Seeing it here, covered in road dust and parked haphazardly on the grass, was jarring. It looked like a frantic animal out of its habitat. I stepped out onto the porch. I did not go down the stairs. I stood at the railing, my hands gripping the weathered wood, and waited. The driver's side door flew open. Robert Carter stepped out. My father was a man who prided himself on presentation. He usually wore tailored slacks and crisp button-down shirts. His hair was always combed. Today, his shirt was wrinkled at the waist, and his eyes were rimmed with red. He looked smaller than I remembered. He looked like a man who had not slept. He slammed the car door shut and marched toward the house. When he looked up and saw me, he did not smile. He did not look relieved to see his missing son. He looked annoyed, as if I were an employee who had failed to show up for a shift. "Get your bag," he said. His voice was rough. "We are leaving." I did not move. I did not flinch. No. He stopped at the bottom of the steps, one foot on the first treed. He looked up at me, blinking in confusion. He was not used to hearing that word from me. "Ralph, this is not a negotiation," he said, his voice rising. "Your mother is sick with worry. Chloe is falling apart. You disappear for 3 days, you turn off your phone, and you think you can just hide out here. Get in the car." "I am not hiding," I said calmly. "I moved out." He scoffed, a sharp, dismissive sound that I knew well. "You moved out. You have no job. You have no money. You are living off your grandfather. And speaking of Silas, where is he? I need to talk to him. There is a misunderstanding with the bank accounts." "There is no misunderstanding," I said. He stopped the payments. My father froze. The color drained from his face, leaving it gray and waxy. He took his foot off the step and retreated slightly, as if he had been slapped. "You told him," he whispered. "It was an accusation. You came here and poisoned him against us. You told him lies about the graduation." "I told him the truth," I said. "And I did not have to tell him much. He has eyes, Dad. He has been watching you drowning for years." My father's shock quickly hardened into anger. He pointed a finger at me, shaking it in the air. "You have no idea what it takes to run a family. You have no idea the pressure we are under. We do everything for you kids. We sacrifice everything. You sacrifice me." I corrected him. "You sacrifice me to keep Chloe comfortable." "That is not true," he snapped. "Your sister has needs. She is sensitive. She goes through things that are harder than what you deal with. You are the strong one, Ralph. You have always been the strong one. We rely on you to understand." "I am tired of understanding," I said. "I am tired of being the strong one so she can be the weak one." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling a long, frustrated breath. He tried to shift tactics. He softened his face, putting on the look of a weary, misunderstood patriarch. It was a look designed to make me feel guilty, to make me feel small. "Look," he said, stepping closer again. "I know you are upset about the ceremony. We messed up. Okay? We admit it. But it was a crisis. We could not leave her alone. We were going to make it up to you. We said we would celebrate later." "Later," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. "You always say later. We will celebrate my birthday later. We will look at my report card later. We will come to my game later. But later never comes, Dad. Later is just a lie you tell to make me shut up. You are being dramatic," he said, waving his hand as if swatting away a fly. "We are family. Families make allowances. Families forgive each other. Families show up," I said. The silence that followed was heavy. My father stared at me. his jaw working. He was realizing that his old keys did not unlock me anymore. The guilt, the duty, the praise for being low maintenance. None of it was working. So that is it? He asked, his voice cold. You are just going to throw us to the wolves. You know what happens if Silas does not turn the money back on? We lose the house. Chloe loses her apartment. Is that what you want? You want to see us on the street because you got your feelings hurt. I want you to stand on your own feet, I said. The way you always told me I had to. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was a bitter, ugly sound. You are selfish, he spat. I never thought I would say that about you, Ralph. I thought you were the good one. But you are just selfish. You are willing to destroy this family to prove a point. I did not destroy anything, I said. I just stopped carrying it. He stared at me for a long moment, searching for a crack in my armor, searching for the boy who would apologize and get in the car. He did not find him. Fine, he said. Stay here. Rot here for all I care. But do not expect us to come crawling back. When you realize you made a mistake, do not call us. I won't, I said. He turned around and marched back to the SUV. He yanked the door open and threw himself into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, loud and aggressive. He reversed violently, kicking up gravel, and spun the wheel. I watched him drive away. I watched the silver car disappear down the long driveway, heading back to the chaos he had created. I stood on the porch for a long time after the dust settled. My heart was pounding in my chest, a fast, rhythmic thud against my ribs. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words I had swallowed for a lifetime. The door behind me opened. Silas stepped out. He held 2 mugs of coffee. He did not ask what happened. He did not ask what was said. He simply handed me a mug. He looked smaller than I remember, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Men usually do, Silas said. When they are trying to spend currency they do not have. I took a sip of the coffee. It was hot and bitter. It grounded me. I had survived the first wave. I had stood my ground against the man who had defined my reality for 22 years. But as the sun began to dip below the tree line, I knew this was not the end. My father had retreated, but he was not the one who held the emotional detonator in our family. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not need to look to know who it was. The war was moving to a new front. My father's retreat was only a temporary ceasefire. I knew the war was not over, because the general had left the field, but the weapon was still active. 2 days later, I drove back to the university campus to return my rented textbooks and clear out my locker. I thought I was safe in the neutral territory of academia, surrounded by students worrying about finals and summer jobs. I was wrong. I walked out of the library, blinking in the bright afternoon sunlight. The wide stone steps were crowded with students rushing between classes. At the bottom of the stairs, standing directly in the center of the path, like a statue erected to her own importance, was Chloe. She did not look like a person in the midst of a mental health crisis. She was wearing oversized designer sunglasses, a trench coat that cost more than my car, and heels that clicked sharply against the pavement. Her hair was blown out to perfection. To a stranger, she looked like a model. To me, she looked like a predator waiting for a wounded animal. She saw me immediately. She took off her sunglasses with a theatrical sweep of her hand and marched up the steps. Her face was arranged into a mask of tragic fury. "You," she said, her voice loud enough to carry over the chatter of the students nearby. "You are actually showing your face here." People stopped. Heads turned. This was exactly what she wanted. Chloe thrived on an audience. If she was going to have a confrontation, she wanted witnesses to see her victimhood. "Hello, Chloe," I said. I kept my voice low, calm. I did not stop walking, trying to sidestep her. She stepped in front of me, blocking my path. She shoved a manicured finger toward my chest. "Do not walk away from me. Mom is a wreck. She has not stopped crying for 2 days. Dad looks like he has aged 10 years. And it is all because of you." A small circle of students had formed around us. I recognized a few of them from my chemistry classes. They looked uncomfortable, but curious. "I think you are confusing cause and effect," I said. "I did not make Mom cry. The consequences of her choices did." "You are so cold," she spat. "You have always been cold. You just left. You abandoned us without a word. And then you went to Grand Rapids and poisoned Grandfather against us. You told him to cut us off." "I did not tell him to do anything," I said. "He looked at the ledger, Chloe. He saw where the money was going." "A cut off my transfer," she shouted. Her voice cracked, shrill and desperate. "I have rent due, Ralph. I have car payments. I have medical bills for my anxiety. You know I cannot work a normal job right now. You know how fragile I am." I looked at her. Really looked at her. For years, I had accepted the narrative that Chloe was made of glass. I walked softly so I would not break her. I silenced my own needs so I would not startle her. But, standing there in the sunlight, she did not look fragile. She looked forceful. She was weaponizing her incompetence to bully me into submission. "You are not fragile," I said. My voice was steady, carrying clearly in the sudden silence of the crowd. "You are 25 years old." Her eyes widened. She was not used to resistance. She was used to compliance. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You do not know what I go through." "I know exactly what you go through," I said. "Slept. I have watched you use your crises to hold this family hostage since I was 12. I have watched Mom and Dad bankrupt themselves to keep you comfortable. And I watched them skip my graduation because you decided you needed attention that day." I was sick. She screamed. She stamped her foot. A literal tantrum on the library steps. I needed them. "And I needed them too," I said. "But that never mattered." Did it? The students around us were whispering now. Chloe looked around, realizing the audience was not on her side. She had expected them to see a cruel brother abandoning a poor, helpless sister. Instead, they saw a grown woman in designer clothes, screaming about her allowance. She turned back to me, her face flushing a deep, angry red. "You are ruining everything. If you do not call Silas and tell him to fix this, I swear, Ralph, you will regret it. You are tearing this family apart." I took a step closer to her. I did not shout. I did not clench my fists. I looked her dead in the eye. "I am not tearing the family apart," I said. "I am just refusing to be the glue anymore. If the family falls apart because one person stopped carrying it, then it was never a family. It was a hostage situation." The words hung in the air. Chloe opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Her script was gone. She had no lines for a scene where the villain refused to play his part. She looked at the people staring at her. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not the performed anxiety she used to manipulate Mom, but real, naked fear. She was realizing that without the money, without the enablers, without me to blame, she was just a loud, empty person standing on a staircase. "You are selfish," she whispered. But the venom was gone. It sounded weak. "I am finished," I said. I stepped around her. She did not move to block me this time. She stood frozen, clutching her expensive sunglasses, as I walked down the rest of the steps. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on my back, but I did not feel shame. I felt a strange, light sensation in my chest. I walked to my car without looking back. I unlocked the door and got in. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. I had faced the monster under the bed, and I had realized she was just a person in a sheet. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Mom. "Please come home. We are having a family meeting tonight. We need to settle this. Silas is coming too." My stomach tightened. I had won the battle on the library steps, but the war was heading back to the source. The final confrontation was not going to be in public. It was going to be in the living room where it all began. I agreed to the meeting only because Silas insisted on driving me. We pulled up to the house in Detroit, just as the streetlights were flickering on, casting orange shadows across the manicured lawn. The house looked exactly as it always did, a brick monument to suburban success. But for the first time, I saw it for what it was. It was a stage set, and the production had run out of funding. We walked to the front door. I reached for my key, then stopped. I rang the bell instead. It was a small choice, but it mattered. I was a guest now. My father opened the door. He looked exhausted, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a glass of dark liquor in his hand. He stepped back to let us in without a word. The living room was arranged like a tribunal. My mother sat in the center of the beige sofa, clutching a tissue. Chloe was curled in the armchair, staring at her phone, refusing to look up. They had clearly rehearsed this. They had set the scene for an intervention, where I was the addict and they were the loving, concerned family. Silas did not sit. He stood by the fireplace, resting his hand on the mantel. I stood next to him. "Thank you for coming," my mother said. Her voice was trembling, pitch perfect in its fragility. "We just want to understand, Ralph. We want to understand why you are doing this to us." "I am not doing anything to you," I said. I moved out. "You cut us off!" my father snapped, the ice in the glass clinking as he gestured. "You went to your grandfather and told him lies. And now our accounts are frozen. Do you have any idea what you have done? We have mortgage payments due next week. We have credit card bills." "I did not tell him to cut you off," I said. Silas cleared his throat. The sound was soft, but it silenced the room instantly. "Ralph did not make the decision," Silas said. "I did." My mother looked at him, her eyes wide and wet. "But why, Dad? We are family. We have always taken care of each other. How can you let us suffer like this?" "I am not letting you suffer," Silas said calmly. "I am letting you pay for your own life." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and placed it on the coffee table. It was a ledger sheet. "For 10 years, I have covered the difference," Silas said. "Every time you lived beyond your means, I wrote a check. I thought I was helping you build a future for the children. But I looked at the numbers last week. I looked at where the money went." He pointed a callous finger at Chloe. She flinched, finally looking up from her screen. 70% of the money I gave you went to her," Silas said. "Failed classes, broken leases, cars she wrecked, legal fees, therapy that never seems to work. She needs help." My mother cried, reaching out to touch Chloe's knee. "She has struggles, Dad. You know that." "I know she struggles," Silas said. "But you did not use my help to make her strong. You used it to keep her weak. And you paid for it by neglecting him." He nodded toward me. The room went deadly quiet. My father looked away, staring into his drink. My mother froze, her hand hovering over Chloe's leg. "You sacrificed the wrong child." Silas said. His voice was not loud, but it hit the walls like a hammer. You took the one who was standing on his own feet, and you cut him down at the knees to make crutches for the one who refuses to walk. That is not fair. My mother whispered. Why love them both equally? No, I said. I stepped forward. You do not. My mother looked at me, shocked by the coldness in my voice. You love the idea of us, I said. You love the picture on the mantel. But you do not love me. You love that I am convenient. You love that I do not ask for anything. You love that you can skip my graduation and know I will not make a scene. We told you we were sorry about that. My father muttered. It is not about the graduation, I said. It is about the fact that I learned to be invisible because it was the only way to survive in this house. I learned that my needs were a burden. I learned that if I had a problem, I was being selfish because Chloe already had all the problems. We did our best. My mother sobbed. It was so hard, Rolf. You do not know how hard it was. It was hard because you refused to lead. Silas said. You let the chaos run the house. My father set his glass down hard on the table. Liquor sloshed over the rim. So what now? You are just going to watch us lose everything. You are going to watch the bank take this house. Silas looked around the room. He looked at the high ceilings, the crown molding, the expensive furniture that he had effectively paid for. If you cannot afford it, you should not live in it, Silas said. Sell it. Downsize. Get jobs that pay real money, not just titles. Tell Chloe she has to work. I cannot work, Chloe shrieked. I have anxiety. Then you will have anxiety at work, I said. Chloe gasped. My mother buried her face in her hands. I am done, I said. I am not coming back. I am not going to fix your computer, Dad. I am not going to listen to you vent, Mom. And I am certainly not going to apologize for surviving. You are choosing this over your family. My mother wept. You are breaking our hearts. I am choosing myself for the first time, I said. And if that breaks your heart, then your love was conditional on my submission. I turned to Silas. I am ready to go. Silas nodded. He looked at his son one last time. There was no hatred in his eyes, only a deep, weary disappointment. You have a chance to fix this, Robert, Silas said. But not with my money. And not with his life. We turned and walked toward the door. Behind us, the sounds of the breakdown began. My mother was wailing. Chloe was screaming that it was not fair. My father was shouting at them to be quiet. It sounded like a storm trapped in a box. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool night air. The street was quiet. The neighbors were inside their houses, watching television, oblivious to the collapse happening across the street. I walked to the car and got in. Silas climbed into the driver's seat. He did not start the engine immediately. He sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. Are you okay? He asked. I looked back at the house. The lights were still on, blazing gold against the dark, but I knew the foundation was cracked beyond repair. Yes, I said. I think I am. Silas turned the key. We pulled away from the curb. I did not look back as we turned the corner. I watched the road ahead, illuminated by the headlights, stretching out toward Grand Rapids. But as we merged onto the highway, my phone lit up one last time. It was not a text. It was a notification from the bank app. My joint account with my parents, the one they had used to monitor my spending for years, had just been emptied. I stared at the screen. $0. They had taken everything I had left in there, a final, petty tax for my rebellion. Stop the car, I said. Silas glanced at me. What is it? They took my savings, I said, my voice steady. The joint account. They drained it. Silas's jaw tightened. He did not pull over. He pressed his foot harder on the gas. "Consider it the severance package," he said. "It is a cheap price to pay for your freedom." He was right. It was gone. The money I saved from waiting tables, the birthday checks I had hoarded. It was all gone. But as the distance between me and that house grew, I realized I was richer than I had ever been. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. The silence in the car was heavy, but it was clean. The collapse was over. Now, the rebuilding could begin. The theft of the money was the last tether. As the miles accumulated between my car and Detroit, I stopped checking the banking app. I stopped calculating what I had lost. I realized Silas was right. It was a severance package. I had paid a few $1,000s to buy back the rest of my life. The silence that followed was strange at first. For weeks, I flinched every time my phone buzzed, expecting a guilt trip or a demand. But the messages had stopped. The panic had burned itself out. My parents, faced with the absolute wall of my grandfather's decision, had finally run out of energy. Life in Grand Rapids took on a rhythm that felt foreign. I found a job in a logistics office. It was quiet work, orderly. For the first time, I had colleagues who asked me how my weekend was, and actually waited for the answer. I made a friend named Mark who invited me to watch a game, and when I said I could not make it, he just said okay. He did not demand an explanation. He did not accuse me of abandoning him. It was a revelation. News from Detroit traveled slowly, filtering through the few relatives who still spoke to Silas. The updates were sparse but telling. The house on Elm Street was listed for sale. My parents were moving into a 2-bedroom condo on the other side of town. The luxury SUVs were gone, traded in for practical sedans. And Chloe. The update on Chloe was the most satisfying, though I felt no joy in it. Only a grim sense of physics taking its course. She had taken a job as a receptionist at a dental office. She was working 40 hours a week. She had to pay her own rent. The world had not ended because she had to participate in it. She was surviving, just like everyone else. One evening in late August, I sat on the porch with Silas. The air was turning crisp, hinting at the autumn to come. We were watching the fireflies blink in the tall grass. "Your aunt called," Silas said, breaking the silence. "She says your father looks better. He lost weight, he is sleeping more." I nodded. "He does not have to keep up the performance anymore." "And your mother?" Silas continued. "She is learning to cook. Since they cannot afford takeout every night." I took a sip of my coffee. "It sounds like they are finally living the life they can afford. It sounds like they are finally growing up," Silas said. He did not say "I told you so." He did not gloat. He just rocked in his chair, a steady, rhythmic creak against the floorboards. "Do you miss them?" he asked. I thought about the question. I thought about the empty seats at graduation. I thought about the years of being the invisible fixer. I thought about the text messages that only ask for money. I miss the idea of them, I said honestly. I miss the parents I wanted them to be. But I do not miss the people they actually were. Silas nodded. That is fair. I looked out at the dark tree line. I had spent so long believing that love was a transaction. I thought I had to earn my place in the world by being useful, by being silent, by being strong enough to carry everyone else's baggage. I had been terrified that if I put the weight down, I would float away. But I was still here. I was sitting on a porch, drinking coffee, listening to the crickets. I was whole. I realized then that walking away was not an act of betrayal. It was an act of rescue. I had pulled myself out of the burning building, And by doing so, I had forced them to finally pick up the buckets and put out the fire themselves. I set my mug down on the railing. The night was quiet. My phone was inside, charging on the kitchen counter, silent and ignored. I did not need to check it. There was no crisis waiting for me. There was only tomorrow, and for the first time in 22 years, it belonged entirely to me. I closed my eyes and breathed in the cool air, finally understanding that peace was not something you waited for. It was something you claimed.